Hello, my name is Eliza, and I'm a survivor advocate for those affected by human trafficking. And I am also a survivor of human trafficking. And today, so excited, we have my first guest, who is a fellow survivor of human trafficking. Her story, I mean, it's really difficult to even announce a guest like this because her story will grip you and remind you that survival is possible. Not just surviving, but also thriving. She is the epitome of picking yourself back up, moving forward, and doing it again and again and again. She is the CEO of, look, I can't even get to the intro without crying.
You're making me cry.
No. All right. Okay. So she is the CEO and founder of Survivor's Voice of Victory. And that is truly who she is and what she has become. I'd like to welcome Dr. Nissi Hamilton. Welcome to my podcast. Sorry, girl, we were cracking up, acting crazy, and having the most funny time. But the thing is, Nissi, I wanted to, we could have acted crazy and acted a fool and been funny and fun. But the truth is, I mean, you deserve an entrance of reverence. You deserve an entrance. You deserve a lot. So thank you for being a guest on my podcast and welcome.
I love you already. Look, how can you start talking with an entrance like that?
Girl, you are, I mean, so, I wanted to, your story is really intense and very, there's a lot to it.
Mm-hmm.
And, I wanted to talk to you about this on camera as opposed to off camera. Mm-hmm. One thing that's been difficult for me as a survivor is doing interviews. I feel like I'm constantly telling my story and constantly talking about Survivor 101, human trafficking 101. I wanted to give you the option today, whether or not you really wanted to go over the story, your story. I mean, it's out there. Your story's out there. Mm-hmm. And, it's a story that deserves to be heard. And I've already talked about this off camera, on camera. I'm already ready to have you back, like on my podcast. Like, I'm like, okay, so clearly I'm going to have to book her for 2 because this could go.
That's the same thing that happened with me and Annie. We had to do 2. And she wasn't even ready to do 2. She was like, oh, I don't care. Tell the other people we're going to be late. I got to hear this.
I mean, your story, it's well, because you almost have 2 parts. You have a vivid story of survival. Mm-hmm. And it's dense, but you also have a great story afterwards. And that's what's hard mm-hmm. in speaking to survivors is it's like, okay, definitely want to talk about what you're doing now. I definitely want to educate folks, raise awareness. I believe that, education, awareness, prevention is big, so I want to do whatever conversation you want to have. And then whatever conversation we miss, we will book for another time. Now, one thing I want to do beforehand, I thought about this very deeply. I want you to shout out everything you're doing beforehand now, and then at the end as well, because a lot of folks don't listen all the way to the end. It gets too intense for them. So just before we even get going, I want folks to know where they can support you, what you have going on now, and where they can follow you on all your social, which I've never done this before, but I just want to make sure that doesn't get missed. So go ahead and shout out all your social, shout out everything you're doing, and then we'll get going with everything.
Awesome, you guys. I am Dr. Nissi Hamilton. That is Nissi. You can also reach me by email, nissi.hamilton@yahoo.com. Facebook, Nissi Hamilton. It's just my name. Hashtag I Survive Human Trafficking. You can follow that page. Twitter @Hamilton Nissi. That's one of my political pages. And I also have another political page on Facebook as well. Instagram, I'm a little slow on still, but it's the real _ Nissi Hamilton there. I try to do as much as I can on there. I have quite a bit of followers and things like that. So people are definitely interested in what it is that I'm doing and saying and things like that. And then if you want to donate to, the cause and what it is that I'm doing out here in Houston in the fence line communities and our wards. So we have, our first ward, second wards, third wards. I predominantly do a lot of work in the third wards where there are a lot of African-American women and there are food insecurities, just resource insecurities, period. And that's where a high level of, in the African-American community, it starts with adultifying our children, right? So the children end up doing adult things in the relationship compared to the parents, and they end up being a guardian for smaller siblings and things like that. And so really, that's where it starts with us. And so I try to reduce that risk and manage that risk. And so far we've given over $1 million worth of free products and services last year. So I'm pretty proud of myself. But if you want to donate, please, www.nissihamilton.com, and just click that PayPal, send us some donations so that we can keep getting the food, getting the trucks, and getting those products out. And thank you, Procter & Gamble and Goya Foods for really helping me just do the work in the community. It's all about the Lord. That's his work and his people too. So
it's so funny. I would never normally have someone shout out what they're doing in advance, but I'm just like, yo, I don't want anybody to miss the ways to support if they don't listen to the whole thing. So I'm like, let me get this out of the way. And then we'll do it again at the end as well. So the truth is you pulled yourself fully up out of the gutter, not once, not twice, not 3 times.
Jesus.
You pulled yourself fully up. I listened to your conversation with Annie. And Annie, by the way, is the survivor that ultimately saved my life.
Okay, yeah. I love her. I love it. I love Miss Annie.
Well, this conversation isn't about me, but I saw Annie one night on YouTube when I was out in the lifestyle. I was looking for a different thing on YouTube, and I saw a video of Annie, and she put words to my experience, and then I reached out to an organization that night and started the process. It was a long process. In listening to your story, it is a lot of things really hit very close to home. You had a specific set of vulnerabilities at a very young age.
Yes.
You were a foster child. Were you a foster child your entire life?
Not my entire life. Foster care for me started at about 11 years old. So when people ask, I'll say, you know what? I've been in court since I was 11 years old. And it's definitely true. And I don't know if I said it on Annie, when I was on Annie's show, when we were talking in the pink chair, where that vulnerability actually started. I might have did, because before foster care, I was actually raped.
Okay.
So before there was even a trafficking scenario, there was rape. I had a SANE nurse. Like, I went through that entire process. And the guy who did rape me ended up going to jail, but that investigation and everything happened while I was in foster care. And I ended up in foster care merely because my grandmother made a decision, an unhealthy decision, that she no longer wanted me to live with her. And unfortunately, parents were allowed to make those type of decisions. And if a child became a burden to you, and I'm speaking for African American girls, I cannot speak for everybody's survivorship. But if a child became a burden for you in the household, or they would destroy the economic construct of it in some type of way, or you as the parent couldn't benefit from that child, like there was no child support system, if they stayed, there was no food stamp support, anything like that, then it's easier to say, you know what, instead of managing this conflict, I would rather give up on it. And that's that space, that scale that I was in as an African American girl. Those were the options for women then. And because of that option, I ended up in foster care. I mean, because the police had nowhere to send me. Actually, before foster care was a shelter. And because I outlived my time in the shelter, which was Chimney Rock Center, it's still here in Houston, CRC. There are a lot of girls trafficked from Chimney Rock Center. I mean, the pimps are literally sitting outside waiting for the girls to run away.
They see, yeah,
right
exactly
here
what
in
it is.
Texas. Right. And that's exactly what that Bissonnette, Richmond, Fondren area is. And just being in that environment and seeing it and witnessing it and things like that. I grew up in it for, quite some time. It wasn't until a year and a half later that I got a foster mom, because I wasn't eligible to be returned back home, all because my grandmother, for the second time. So a year and a half before, okay, I don't want to. A year and a half, I'm gone, and it's still, I don't want her. And now I'm in foster care on a permanent basis.
So you were sexually assaulted before you went into foster care. So already those boundaries are broken at a very, very young age. You go into foster care. And then at age 14, if I'm correct, at age 14, yes. You were no longer in foster care. And that was, go ahead.
Yes.
You know your story better than me, so I'm not.
No, no, when people are saying it, I'm like, yes, I want to make sure people are clear, because I know a lot of times when survivors are telling their stories and I hear the feedback, people are always trying to have a predicted timeline of their own, a suggestion about when something had happened. So right. I try to make it as clear as possible so that people will have a healthy understanding that, you don't just survive. This is a lifelong right. interval. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, that's what was so hard in booking you, Nissi, because you have so much of a story there. And I truly believe that your story definitely needs to be heard on as many platforms as possible, because you have the story of so many young folks out there. And honestly, my goal with every podcast, with every single thing I do, with every tweet I put out, everything, is that one person will see it, one person will self-identify and step forward before the other stuff happens. That's yes. kind of my whole energy, is how can we prevent this crime before it happens? Your story is dense because it's unfortunate, but it happened for a really long time, yes. And I think that there are a lot of things about your story that will resonate with survivors of molestation, domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, because so many, while I was listening to your story, I was like, okay, this happened, then this happened, that happened, that happened. You had a lot of vulnerabilities and roadblocks put in your way. So you ended up homeless at a very young age, living
behind 14. Yeah. So in the state of Texas, at the age of 12, and this is per the family code, you are allowed to decide which parent you want to live with. That wasn't necessarily the case for me. At 14, I had already not had an ad litem, or it's either ad litem or amicus, which is a child's attorney. So I'm going through this court process, and there's no one navigating me through the court process. But I get to hear everything like an adult would. And I get to manage the conflict of everything like an adult would in the court process about my life. The people that's there to make a deciding, judgment about my life is one of the people who didn't want me to live with them, which is my grandmother. But then, because she made that decision for me not to be with her, the judge then put it in my lap to make the decision on whether or not if I wanted to go back, but what did I want going back to look like for me? Mm-hmm. So as you can imagine, at 14 years old, this new found powers put in my hands on my adjusted lifestyle that I can have, living with a grandparent who did not want me to live with them from the beginning, the reason why we were in this long drawn out process. And now my mother is also involved, because she has to because of the situation she was in, which was incarcerated. So my mother's in an orange jumpsuit. She's fresh out of 1200 Baker. She's handcuffed and shackled. She's sitting on one end of the table. I'm sitting on the other end of the table. And so the option is emancipation. And for me to be treated as an adult while living with my grandmother so that they could end the conservatorship with me. Right. And so that's where it started. Because I made a choice to not divorce my mother, because that's the way it was explained to me, that I'm going to divorce my mother. And I'm living on biblical principles. Honor your mother and your father. You know, your day is going to be short. And I'm thinking to myself, there's no way I could divorce my mother. I only have one parent.
Right.
You know, which was her. I had never met my father before. And I'm going back to another parent, a grandparent, who didn't want me to live with them either. So I'm like, why would I divorce the one opportunity I do have at 14 years old?
At 14,
because I made it
really, you know, I was thinking back the things that were important to me, the things that I knew. This is not an adult mind that's thinking about these things. You know, you're trying to navigate an adult world as a child.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Through all this turmoil, you ended up homeless, living behind a Walmart.
Right.
When you were homeless, when you became homeless, were you already pregnant, or did you become pregnant off of whomever you would be living with from there? I was a little,
yeah. What? Finish the statement. You was a little confused.
yeah, I was a little unclear. Not that it's really 100% any of my business. I mean, I got the point. You know what I mean? Does it matter? Does it matter? But I think that that's kind of crucial, because I think that that was another moment where there was a severe vulnerability. And I hate to call a child a vulnerability. It's not. I admire everything that you did since then, for sure. But it just another roadblock, another situation it put in your life that is just like, holy Toledo, more pressure. More pressure. So you're homeless, you're living behind a Walmart. Were you pregnant already, or did you get pregnant after that?
I got pregnant after that.
Okay. And
I got pregnant.
I was dying to ask, was the individual whom you ended up living with, who I'm sure acted like your savior and, oh, I'm going to get you together.
Yes.
And yeah, I already know. I already knew, listen to it. I was like, oh, I already know this. Was that individual over the age of 18?
No, we were
Okay.
actually the same age. He had just gotten out of incarceration, and I actually met him at the same church. So we went to the same church. So the same church that the girl who, you know, participated in me being trafficked is the same church with the guy that I ended up getting pregnant from.
Okay, so you moved in out of desperation. Do you consider your relationship with him survival sex, or was it a real relationship to you?
It was survival sex, but it was also a real relationship. And it became a real relationship after the pregnancy. Because at first it was like, if I get pregnant, I can have somewhere to stay. I was, and here's the thing, when people feed your vulnerability, then it's a different mindset. The original vulnerability is, I am homeless. My grandmother is deceased 9 months after I returned home. She died from breast cancer. My mother's still incarcerated. My court case had ended while my mother still had parental guardianship over me. And per the state of Texas, since they gave me that opportunity, I am basically on my own. This is it. I am a homeless minor.
Which I want folks to, sorry. And I want folks to remember that are listening to this, because a lot of the individuals that follow me or keep up with the things I do are very human trafficking 101. I just want to remind folks that when an individual is homeless or runaway, something like that, it's very difficult to find work, housing, food.
Yes.
How is a child going to pay for their own way? They give most youth about 48 hours before they're trafficked, because how are you going to live, especially depending on the climate that you're in? It's really, really difficult. So I definitely understood that. I just wasn't sure if that individual was over 18, under 18. You got pregnant. Now, one question I did have, and I thought that this was really interesting. So you're saying that you met this young man at your church, you conceived a child together. You also met essentially well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but essentially a part of the trafficking scheme you met through the church. One question I was dying to ask when you were telling your story was, do you think that the church had a role to play in that, or was that completely separate and just random?
I honestly believe it was separate and random.
Okay. I just wasn't
I
sure.
think, yeah, I think today the church has a role in human trafficking because they won't address it. See, if I go to church and all we talk about is domestic violence, and we talk about all the kings, how great they were when they were part of the trafficking scheme because they had concubines, things like that. They participated with Persian harems, right? Because that's where it came from. And all of these individualized concepts about marriage and the authority of the man in the household, women roles, those type of diversions and things like that, because they want to address it. Things like saying like Rahab was a prostitute and she was a victim of human trafficking.
That's right.
She was forced to sleep with the king and all of his comrades, but she became a war hero as a result of it. And so, but when you still preaching her a prostitute and you don't address her as a survivor of human trafficking, and now a queen because she got married, then you lose me because you're not addressing my issue because I wasn't a prostitute. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Of course I do.
Who's going to address me in the church? Who's going to talk to my other survivor sisters in the church? Who's going to address the men? And what I don't like, when the Bible's being preached, is that the issues of the men are not addressed. Their character is addressed and how they dealt with the individual issues that the Bible brings up. But we can't just keep preaching King David, he made a mistake with Bathsheba. No, he raped Bathsheba. He forced her to have a baby with her. She couldn't even grieve her husband because he killed her. He killed him. That's murder. You understand what I'm saying? And so just tell the story correctly. Let us understand why. This man was participating in some evil. These were evil contradictions. And so these are the things today that make people want to move away from the word of God. Whereas I'm like, no, I want to move to the word of God. But if we're going to talk about it, tell the story right.
So, and I agree with you, by the way. I just wanted to let you know, I agree with you completely. We are hitting a stride as the anti-human trafficking movement, as survivor space, whatever you want to call it. We are hitting a stride. It is semi upon us, not necessarily us as survivors, but as survivor advocates and public survivor leaders, to guide that conversation. It will get there. It will get there. It's going to be a scratch and a claw and a climb up, just like every other movement has ever been, and the rewards would be amazing. One thing I try to remind myself is just to think of the movement as a hockey stick, and eventually, and we are hitting that hockey stick where it sort of jolts up, and then
yes.
And I truly feel that, because since I stepped forward to receive help and healing and to get away from my abuser, things are totally different than they are now. Now we can be out here talking and people want to hear it. They don't quite know what they're hearing yet. And so it's on us. So I'm glad that you said that, because I think that that's important for anyone in the faith leaders need to hear that. And I think the general public is ready for the real, raw, authentic, what's the real deal. That's
right.
I feel like the people are ready. They're hungry for it. They just don't know where to get it, how to process it. So moving forward a little bit ahead in your story, you had your first child. You got sued. You got sued by the state of Texas because you once again found yourself homeless as a minor youth with a child. You were sued because you were homeless, a homeless mother, which I thought, when I heard that, my whole life blew back. I was like, because I just knew, I was like, oh my gosh, you want to talk about kicking someone while they're down. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow,
Girl.
Instead of offering resources, you're going to go ahead and sue this minor who has just had a child.
And just for the podcast, I'm actually looking for the picture of me when I was in the hospital right after I have the baby. Because I mean,
most people will be listening, but you do have some fire pictures.
Oh,
I was pulling up your fire pictures beforehand. I was like scrolling through showing Chanel. I was like, yo, look at her in this all leather outfit. She was giving me life. I zoomed into your nails. Girl, I was dead. I said, I got to get my brand together. I'm out here so dry. I said, she's out here with the full nails, the full leather outfit. I was like, stop. Literally, I was so jealous and just weak out here. So I just don't want to lose sight of where I'm at. So
no, I got you. Yeah, I have this baby.
so yeah,
And a part of that process.
you had your child, you were sued. And part of your court order was you had to put money into a bank account, get a GED, which is hard, not easy, and also have a place of your own. My question, so you went in a desperate need to try to get some help. You were asking around at church.
Yes.
You hooked yourself up with a fellow, someone that was more around your age at church, a female, to try to just get some support, which by the way, I think your instincts with that were really good. I think your instincts were good. They weren't ready to support you. And I think that any faith leader, hospital, law enforcement, we got to get ready so that when the next young Nissi step forward to you, we are ready to take care of her and meet her where she's at so that she does not end up, because the rest of this is a legit nightmare. Where it goes from here is a nightmare. So you meet a gal at church. She says, look, I'm a server. I'm a cocktail server at a strip club. I'm going to give you my ID. I'm going to give you my ID, and you could go work at another strip club as a cocktail server off, doing something else, which by the way, is exactly how I got into the life for the second time.
Wow.
Yes, that's exactly how I got, well, not from church, but that's exactly how I got into the life. The second time. So, as a cocktail server, you were doing okay.
I was okay. $75 a day.
And that's
at this point. Yeah, I mean, because the hospitality industry, I mean, it's so fast in the strip club. It's like, you when you're new, you're constantly having to ask the bartender how much to charge for a drink. Once you hear $8, you're like, you know what? It's $10 today. Because you want the extra $2 on top of whatever they tip gonna be. Where you would have walked away with just $2 in tip, you'll walk away with $5 in tip.
So you were hustling. In above the board way, the way everybody, and you have a beautiful smile, you're a beautiful woman, you're making your tips. So my question was, did that woman that gave you her ID to do that, do you think, was she being trafficked as well? And do you think that she was recruited to bring you in for her pimp?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Even when I think about it today, I mean, because we don't talk to each other, but like we're Facebook friends and things like that. Even today, even after, her hearing my story and just knowing how detailed and really going back and think about it, I don't think she knew that she was participating in a scheme of human trafficking.
So
and that's how it happened.
So she was maybe also a survivor?
Yeah, I just don't think that she identifies as a survivor. I don't think she's ready to talk about it. I think that she's in a place where she's trying to see where she fits in without offending people. Do you get what I'm saying? Because there may be some guilt there. There's some shame, you know what I'm saying? And just be really ready to say that, or, because it's very confusing for people when they don't know that they're doing it. If a boy says, oh yeah, man, I ran a train on that girl. Well, that's trafficking. You just enslaved her. That's manipulation. That's recruitment. That's exploitation. If you got a friend and there's a girl and you sleeping with her and you tell your friend to sleep with her too, and then you pass the girl around, what the hell you think that is? That right there is trafficking. Trafficking is the sale of a body. Now, whether you purchase it for money, whether you purchase it for power, whether there's some type of instrument or measurement of value you put on it, that doesn't mean anything. The fact that you coerce somebody, meaning coercion means that you did it without a contract. There was no consideration. Contracts require consideration. That's a legal terminology. There was no consideration, but you forced this person into a contract about their body with another human being, then that's a sale. Whether you got something in return. If your return was your ego and personal gratification, then there was a return. Because you kept it going, it made you feel good, you talked about it. What is that? And so when I break it down like that, everybody gets it then. But it's like when you say force, fraud, or coercion, people really don't understand that terminology. I even talk about it with them.
They really don't. It's you know, that's why I said we're just beginning. Like I feel like we're just beginning, because that's why I was so nervous of where to start with you, because I was like, they need to hear a story because people still don't get it. It's like something, there's a block in there. And I feel, and you might agree with me, is I feel like the general public's block with human trafficking, especially in the United States, is the coercive aspect. And it's so, it's so, and your story personifies that in a way. You know, it just, people do not understand human trafficking, and no matter how hard I explain it, it's like I'm starting from 101 every day. There is no way I can over explain it. It's really hard for me, Nissi, you know, because I want to talk about what human trafficking is going to look like in 2050, so we can start mitigating it now. But they aren't ready to have that conversation. They're stuck in the Epstein, the global elites, and the truth is, Nissi, unfortunately, in the United States, your story is more of what we see. That's the national. That's the national average. And, you know, it just breaks my heart because I want people to see, and I just don't know what it's going to take for us to get there. But anyway, so you started at the strip club. You were a server. Eventually, the boyfriend, who was a pimp and a human trafficker, said to you, you cannot get your child back. I'm going to watch your child while you're at work. But you cannot get your child back this time unless you bring me $200 a night. Which, when you're making $75 and you have to put in money into your bank account for this court situation to keep your child, and you can't go to the police because now you're doing something kind of off the grid. You used another girl's ID. So you're kind of doing something a little, like, not shady, but kind of shady. So you can't go to the police.
Definitely illegal.
Definitely illegal. I was going to say, you know, definitely a little off the grid. So you're doing something that you're technically not supposed to be doing, but you're doing something for survival. Let's keep it all the way real. You were trying to survive. You know, so you're working at the strip club, but you can't go to the police about your child. You can't go to the police about the fact that this person's now exploiting you. And you had to make some serious decisions. As a minor, keep in mind, you're still a minor. That's what's tripping me out about this whole story. You're still a minor. So my question for you is, in that exchange, you're not going to be able to get your kid back unless you bring me $200.
Right.
Was it implied that you needed to sell sex to bring home that $200? Or was it implied that you can bring it home? You just need to bring it home.
It was implied that I just needed to bring it home. I needed to figure it out. And I was like, oh, okay. You know, I'm a kid. So here in my mind, walk with me. If I'm doing $75 a day, I mean, if I give you 25 and I keep 50, we should be good, because at least in the 5-day, you know, week period, you walk away with $125 a week, which would be a suggestive rate in 1 month be about $500 for one kid. Because that money was too slow for him. It was like, look, you get what I'm saying? Let me beef this up. So for me, it was like, run the $200 through the account so that when when the bank balances the ledgers, they do what you call LIFO, FIFO, last in, first out, instead of first in, last out, right? And that's accounting terminology, you know. So
my shoulder pads.
Yeah, because I got my MBA, and so the ledger would always read, you know, the money is as a deposit, how much was deposited into the account for that month, that would make me eligible to, have enough money to keep my baby. And so I'm running the $200 through the account only to take it back out to give it to him. But the bank account was tracking my progress.
Right.
See, there was no progress tracker. And honestly, I don't believe that it was implied that I needed to have sex for money, but I do believe that through the court system, it was implied that arrangement that the judge made for me was that I was supposed to fail. And there was a part of that system that my rights were supposed to be terminated, because back then, that's exactly how the system would sell babies.
That might be a conversation for a different day, because we could probably talk about that the rest of the podcast. Yeah, you were set up to fail. That's why I couldn't even introduce you without crying, because it's like, yo, this woman has had roadblock. And I know how hard it is to get up once, but to keep doing it, Nissi, that's a really big deal. I don't want to diminish that, because, at a certain point you've hit the ground so many times, getting back up, it just feels like regular standard. But I just can't believe, I was like, listen to your story. I was like, whew, dang. Okay. I was like, all right.
I laugh about it now.
Buckle up.
But it didn't feel good. It didn't feel good going through it, because I do have a great relationship with the Lord, and me and him we tight. One day the Lord was talking to me and he said, listen, Nissi, because I begged God, I said, please don't let me tell my story. Ooh, Eliza, I did not want to tell my story. I said, please, it's so nasty, it's so ugly, it's so greedy. I got to tell all this ugly stuff and I don't know how to tell it. Girl, you should have heard me the first times I was trying to tell my story. And it's online. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, I was trying to figure out what part to start, And so when I first started telling my story, I started telling my mom's story to show people, how did I even get here? Where did these ideas even came from? This wasn't even something that I just woke up into. This was unfinished business of my mother. And the Bible tell you that the sins of the mother and the father go with the children. And so you just got to be that person. And I said, God, out of all people, you picked me. He said, oh, I didn't send you to the world to teach people how to fail because of your life. I said, well, then why are you sending me? He said, to teach them how to get up. And so when you just said that just now, you remind me every single time that when I heard the Lord say it, that's the way people see it. And that's how I need people to see it, because that's what gives me the strength and the mindset. Do you know how powerful your mind got to be to rehearse and give value to a traumatic experience when you're trying to move forward from a healed place? That's a very difficult thing to do. That's why I tell people, baby, don't play with me. I'm a bad somebody. Don't play with me.
Right. No, I understand. I definitely understand. This is not the funnest thing to think about all the time. It's not the funnest thing to relive. But the truth is, Nissi, not everyone's gonna be a survivor of human trafficking, but everyone survived or is coming through something,
Right.
So even if someone is not a survivor of sexual assault, domestic violence, and human trafficking, they still are going to eventually need to get back up from something. They could not be accepted for a job that they want. There is always something. And I think that is one thing that the general public does take away from public survivor leaders is get back up. Not today. We're going to get back up and keep it moving. And that's a really difficult place to get to. It really, really is.
Right.
So I think that's freaking amazing that you were able to do it. And I'm still slowly working my way through getting, but it does kind of help though, because now, and I want other, survivors that just are stepping out of a relationship that's not healthy. I want them to remember Nissi and I, it wasn't easy for us to get to a place where we can sit here and be funny and have fun and almost not laugh about our experience, but really be so jovial. It's the fact that we're so grateful to be where we're at today.
Yes.
And the same type of stuff seems petty and small compared to the other stuff that we've been through. I mean, once it's just kind of like, okay, what else you got? What else you got? So I always want folks to know, just keep getting back up, keep trying. So you went from, you started making those $200 a day. Then so is that first person Was he a trafficker and was he a pimp? Was he labor trafficking you or was he sex trafficking you or both?
That's labor trafficking. He was
Okay.
definitely labor trafficking.
And I agree.
I don't think, yeah, I don't think he understood the concept of what it was he was doing. So what I did learn as a professional to myself, because the Bible says, study to show yourself approved. Studying my own life, I realized that there are two key components to a pimp. They want the same thing that you and I want. They want financial independence.
Yeah.
The problem with financial independence is the way you go about it. And when you start wanting financial independence at the rate of receiving an untaxed progressive income, meaning can't nobody follow your money because you ain't following it on taxes, or you're participating in a system that you saying, hey, I need this system to benefit me, but you also defrauding that same system because you won't pay taxes for it, then we have a problem. Okay, that's not financial independence. That is trafficking. That's the difference. And that took me some time to understand it, because a lot of people get confused on labor trafficking. When they talk about human trafficking, the first thing they want to go to is the sex. And they don't even talk about the vulnerability in labor trafficking. I was more suicidal with labor trafficking than I was with human trafficking. That's something that people don't even talk about.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And I was ready to kill myself because I knew if I didn't come with that $200, I was gonna, not see my kid. You know what I'm saying? Just the threat of something that you love more than life itself, while yet nobody loved you more than life itself, but you was willing to protect it. It's like, okay, the shoe is on the other foot. I refuse to be like my mother, abandon my kid, but I also refuse to be like my grandmother and walk away from my kid. And I really believe that that was my test, that was the test of the enemy on my life to show me that I was never going to be in a place of healing. I was never going to have that type of hope. I was never going to be in a place where I could receive the type of future where I could be in a life where somebody wanted me. And so I had to teach myself how to want something the same way I wanted to be wanted. And that was my kid. But I could have, and there was an opportunity to walk away and say, you know what? Fuck it. Not forget it. Fuck it. Okay? You would never forget that, Like, no. Keep the baby. Stay. You can have the baby. Go on about your way. I can have another baby, look just like him. And we Gucci. You understand what I'm saying? Because at this point, I'm 16, I'm tired.
Which is wild. It's hard to explain how a minor can be exhausted like that. Thinking about a young person being exhausted, tired, stretched to the limit. You were a minor and you were being exploited, labor trafficked, to even get the opportunity to see your child. You couldn't go to the authorities. And then a pimp hit you up, a trafficker hit you up and portrayed the illusion of being in a romantic relationship. Is that right? For the second sort of exploitative, well, maybe fourth exploitative relationship, like the real
sort of, kind of. So as you can imagine, with this newfound financial independence that this man has, who's exploiting me,
right?
Because I've never seen money hand over fist like that for having to do no work. He is, as you can imagine, at the strip club bragging about how much money he's making, because he needs to feel good about this money he's making, and he wants people to congratulate him for a job well done. And that's what I learned about traffickers. They seek rewards more than they value consequences. And that's what made me know that this shit just ain't normal. When you seek reward instead of putting a value on consequences, there's an issue. You're not even ready for leadership of no standard. And just me being in the strip club, crying all the time about the $200 that I got to get. I'm talking to the girls in the strip club about the $200. And there's another pimp inside the club that's hearing different interfaces and getting the information in different intervals about what's going on with me.
Now, did the second pimp,
that he
sorry to interrupt you, Nissi, did the second pimp have individuals who were working for him that were working through the club?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
he had girls already.
So he was trafficking multiple women through the club, maybe I don't know, 1, 2, 3. I want folks to understand how this all works together. So Nissi is in a rough spot. Nissi's already in an environment where there are pimps and other trafficking victims, or, whatever you want to call it. And then they always say, because there's always other girls or other people around that are hyping up these bad decisions, these bad ideas, because they are incentivized to get that new blood, that fresh blood, that fresh meat. And the truth is that the new girl always makes the most money, and they always want to help their pimp out. So they want to put that new girl out in front so they quit getting beat. It's a whole situation. I want folks to remember to realize this, because so Nissi was complaining. Everyone pretended to care, but in truth, they're eyeballing her for the operation. Willingly or unwillingly. Now, you also have to put into factor their drugs, alcohol, and whatever else is going on. They saw you're still underage.
Yes, and I'm 16 now because time is going.
The girls that were working
I'm 16 years
you're right. You're 16 years old. Like, you just could barely drive. And the other girls in the club recruit you for this pimp. And then the pimp was he a Romeo pimp?
Because the lexicon only identifies 2 types of pimps, which are the Romeo and then the gorilla pimp, he would be considered a Romeo pimp.
But Nissi, I'm not caring about what the lexicon says. What do you describe him as? He was a popcorn pimp. That's what I call him. Yes, this is why I love Survivors. Okay, please explain to me what a popcorn pimp is.
Well, since you asked. The Vanessa Gillian case that happened out in Texas, Corpus Christi, Texas, I believe. The young lady, she was in the army, and the black guy who was trying to pimp her out and use the white girl to basically be a stakeholder for him. So she was doing the recruiting for him, except for Vanessa was like, oh, hell no. And a popcorn pimp is a pimp that is so weak that a black girl or somebody stronger in a stronger culture, they would not choose this person to be their pimp or to identify them as somebody, that you could be romantic with. And he was not somebody that I would have identified as being romantic with. Like, he wasn't my type.
So you weren't having relations with him even out of survival or...
Right. It wasn't. Yeah, that's not, he beat the guy up. I'm happy. Okay, cool. You beat him up and I ain't got nowhere to stay, but I got my baby. What's gonna happen? Okay, well, you can come live with me. Okay. I got a little, I'm hip to some stuff. And so it's like, I know to have some type of standard and demand some things up front. And so because he's playing a role that he got to play, and I'm sitting up here trying to negotiate the power I think I have. I'm telling him what it is I want, what it is I need. I'm putting my demands out there like I'm running things, because now you giving me a power that I didn't have. You fought for me. Yeah, you my hero, but you fought for me. Okay, I'm worth fighting for. Okay, that's all I needed. You done boosted my ego, baby. I'm happy now. Okay, cool. Because I know I ain't crazy.
Boosted your ego, but gave you things that you needed. What's wild to me is the thought of navigating this world so heavily as a child yourself. That's, I think, what really stands out. So you switched traffickers. Everything was cool for a while. Everything was good. You thought everything was great. Baby was fed formula diapers. Your hair was done. Your nail was done. You got your lashes. Everything was good. And then one day he flipped the script. He switched it up on you.
Right.
Pushed the
So
boundary and asked for a little bit more. Now, were you still working at the strip club during this time as a waitress? So you had completely stopped working. What was the words that he said to where you sort of knew you either, how did that exchange happen? And were there other females living in the household at the same time that were doing this for him?
They were, and they were, working to pay bills.
Right.
And then there began to be other arguments with other girls that was walking away from him because the conversation was, I would hear things like, how you gonna leave me for her? I'm the one brought her to you. And so when those adjectives and that type of conversation, I'm still not even getting that I was recruited for him. I'm thinking, if you defended my honor to get me, you need to defend my honor to keep me with these women. So in this relationship, I think I have some type of control because I don't have to work. My kid is here. We're good. All the rest of these helpers got to work to help pay the bills. Okay.
You said helpers.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, I know exactly what you're saying.
So I'm just like, shoot, I'm the prize.
So you thought you were all the way on, but in reality, you were getting groomed to be the next. That's the truth. That's the truth.
That was the truth.
That was the truth.
Right. They didn't mind arguing with me about it, and they didn't mind.
And they were irritated that you were also in here getting that main spot, but in reality, you were just being groomed, coerced to be the next, to be a victim once again. So he flipped the script on you, said, look, baby, I can't get your hair done. I can't get your nails done. You're going to have to go get some money.
Well, it didn't sound particularly like that. So as you can imagine, if you living in a harem and the girls are leaving because they all getting into it with you and he sees you as a prize, he's willing to keep you and let them go. He's defending my honor, but he's also losing money.
I see.
So because he's willing to lose the money, I'm supposed to see this as a sign of love. This is supposed to be my judgment that he loved me. So at this point, I think he loves me. We're in a relationship and he's going to keep defending my honor. And at this point, I've never been with or around anyone who's fought for me. So this is the end all be all for me. This is, Nissi 2.0 at this particular point. And so what happens is all of a sudden, whereas bills were getting paid when the women were there, now a lot of the women that was the top money makers are gone.
What did you think about the other girls, watching them go make the money? What did you think about them going to work and paying your dude that you were kind of rocking with? What did you think about them? What did you think about what they were doing?
Well, you know what? Like I said, you don't see it as trafficking. For me, the way the conversations was, girl, I can't get no apartment because I got a felony, so I had to come live with such and such. He just letting me stay here for a little while. Or, I'm hiding my kids away from my baby daddy, so I'm going to just stay here for a little while. You get what I'm saying? Like that, there was always some type of grievous scenario that was going on, the reason why they had to stay there or participate in that type of living situation. It was nothing that would alarm you or allude you to the fact that this is human trafficking, because it all sounded normal. And the reason why it sounded normal was because I was in a grievous situation. I was 16 in the strip club. Girl, I'm just working here to keep my baby so CPS won't take them, girl. So I got it. And there was no reason for me to question it because I was tired of people questioning my vulnerabilities. 100%. So I accepted it.
And it was what you know. It was what you knew. So when it's what you know,
I knew.
So it's when it's what you know. There's no other. It doesn't seem weird. It doesn't seem odd.
No.
This is what I know. This is the lifestyle. This is what we're doing. Yeah, this is a lifestyle. So, was there a third trafficker, or was that second one, third one, was that the last one, or was there another one? Because you did end up marrying. There's a whole other situation there. Was that the same?
Woo!
Yeah, there's a whole.
Girl, you got the whole scoop. Where y'all getting these scoops from?
Girl, don't
when I saw Look, when I saw Daily Mail put some stuff out there, I said, where y'all get that scoop from? They must have been really listening.
I was hyped. I was
They
hyped for you. No, actually, you're one of the survivors over the last few months, especially through, human trafficking prevention, human trafficking and slavery prevention month, the month of January. And then, you're one of the survivors that really stood out. And I was glad, I feel like I'm just going to be completely transparent. I feel like there needs to be more, Black voices, Black survivor voices,
Yeah.
because it's something that deeply affects the community. And I can say it, but it doesn't hit the same,
Yes.
Nissi. So
Right,
it doesn't
right.
hit the
I
same, because I
respect
know
you.
what I see. I know what I see. I can read data, statistics, and numbers, but it's not reading the same. So when I see a survivor like you be out there in corporate press, doing podcasts, out here, speaking engagements, I'm like, cool. Of course, like Tanya Gould, who was just, she was just getting an awesome, presidential, just a whole situation. She was just, so I see these survivors out there, I just feel like your story needs to be heard. So I'm hyped that you're out here doing your thing. I'm like, oh, this is the hotness. I need to have you out here. But I don't think folks fully understand how hard this hits Black and brown women and
Yes.
girls, Black girls specifically in the United States. I don't think people understand. And it sounds weird me bringing it up, because it's like, I'm as white as this is driven snow, but the numbers
And baby, I love you.
They do.
White women, white women are the women, they are the reason why we're even talking about discoverable inferences in human trafficking, mainly because of slavery. Human trafficking was a terminology brought on by white people to begin with, white men in particular, when they came out with the Man's Act, because there was a Black boxer who was sleeping with a white prostitute and they didn't like it. And so human trafficking was to prevent white slavery. It had nothing to do with preventing slavery from, sex slavery from Black girls. And when you hear slavery, the only epidemia that you hear about it is the labor side. You don't hear the sex part. You don't hear the parts where Black women were sold in a public sale of Negroes as wenches on the sale market, and they were bought for the sum of $1,250. Who were their masters? They were white men. When they were bought for sex slavery, well, where was they sleeping with them at? Because it wasn't in the outhouse. They were what you call house Negroes. They slept in the house. But who also slept in the house? My white sisters slept in the house too. So when he wasn't sleeping with his white wife, he would be sleeping with his Black sex slave. And she knew it. And so there's been tension between white women and Black women because of these histories that have not been told correctly. And so I got my story of slavery from my great grandmother, but then my white sister, she got her story about slavery from her white grandmother too. And because women were told to be seen and not heard, the conversation was never had. So what needs to happen is I need to hear how your white great grandmother felt about living in a house with whoever master was at that time, that she had to shut up and keep her mouth closed to keep the economy of her house together. Okay? Because he was sleeping with the Black nanny, and she wasn't a nanny. Well, they went to nannies. It was nanny, pick a nanny. They were cookies. If you go look at Django Unchained, she was a cookie. That's where that word comes from. It was the depiction of a wench, sex slave. That's what it was for. And the average age of a sex slave started at 4 years old. So we want to talk about sex slavery. I mean, that's where it came from. It came from European men bringing West African traditions of concubinage, public prostitution, private prostitution, over into the Americas, because they thought it was a grand idea and they wanted to be treated like kings. That's what they wanted.
I think that these are really dark things for folks to wrap their head around. But you know what, Nissi? I see change. I do see change. I do.
It is.
It's going to be slow.
This is change.
I'm not going to say,
me and you talking is
of course,
change.
yeah. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you like it's not, but I'm glad that you brought some of that up. You know, there are a lot of things I don't feel like I'm the right person to bring it up. You know, I have my own story. And I'll tell my story, but you know, there are a lot of aspects about this that it never feels comfortable for me. I can't speak from the LGBTQ, you know, experience. I can't speak from the Black experience. I can't speak from the Indigenous experience. I can't speak from, you know, folks that are hard of hearings, folks that are blind. I can't speak from that experience. All I have is my own, you know, but I think that I really, really feel like there's a lot of change coming, Nissi, and you are at the forefront. I'm a little bit behind the forefront, but I'm pushing. You know, I push, I do my thing.
Girl, you on top of the forefront because you my sister.
I hate to toot my own horn.
Yeah, do it. Shoulder.
I hate to toot my own horn.
Because let me tell you, what you do for others, God will do for you. That is what it is. But we gotta stop. We gotta stop and have this conversation. There gotta be a salt and pepper. A white girl gonna have to hook up with a Black girl and just be like, look, we're gonna team up and take over. You're gonna take the Black side, I'm gonna take the white side, and we're gonna show them how to reduce the idea of racism in human trafficking. And it's going to start with our propaganda. It's going to start with our billboard. Hell, it's going to start with Hollywood and our movies. If you give me one more Taken movie with Liam Neeson, a white man going to save a white girl, I'm going to cut your throat, Hollywood. And if you show me the reverse racism of that with the Equalizer with Denzel Washington, a Black man going to save a white girl, I'm going to cut your throat. When are we going to show some movies of some men, white, Black, Asian, in different biopic, Black and Indigenous people of color? Hell, put an Indian man in there. I don't care. Put a redneck in there. Put a cowboy in there. I don't care. You feel what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying, Nissi.
Go put a gun-toting,
Nissi.
You know what I'm saying? Redneck. I'm a Christian shooting, you know.
Nissi, but this is
put one of them in there.
This is
but put the Black girl in there and show her worth saving. Those movies are great. They're great ideas. But they don't show you to be worth saving as a Black girl. What I do love is Marvel came through for the Black girls with the Black Widow. And the Black Widow is a movie about labor trafficking. Labor trafficking also includes turning children into military.
That's right.
You know,
child soldiers.
As military soldiers and stuff. And that's what happened in the Black Widow. And so, you know, when I seen my girl Scarlett Johansson come out there, girl, I was like, girl, you better go out here, baby. You know, that's my girl. But if you go look at the Black Widow, a lot of the, you know, a lot of the main speaking parts were African American girls, and you know, it showed them being trafficked. It talked about the story of them being taken away from their families and stuff, and basically turned into you know, military warfare, just tyrants against, you know, other political industries and industry conglomerates and stuff that wouldn't do what other people wanted them to do, so that this one particular man could take over the world. And there were things in there that really stuck out, like him putting sensories in these girls' brain where they couldn't kill them and stuff like that, all this kind of stuff. That's exactly what happens in trafficking. I mean, that movie just had it down to the T. It was beautiful. I loved it. But we got to start showing more scenes of that, the Black girls and the white girls working together, because we do. And we do love each other.
Oh, I do. But, you know, I always, you know, it's hard, Nissi. I'm not even going to lie to you. It really is hard.
I know.
It is hard because, you know, I just try not to speak for anybody else, you know, and it really is hard, but it's just hard. And I never want to step on anybody's toes or take anybody's spot. It's just weird. It's just a weird energy, but I just try to do me. And if it's the vibe, it's a vibe. And if not, then so be it, and let people do whatever. You know what I mean? I just try to just, you know, I don't know how to explain it. I just try to just do me. And if people connect with the energy, so be it. You know, I think one place that would be interesting to go, just for time's sake, is you ended up with, I really, really, really want to touch on your military experience, you getting out, because that is savage. Like,
I was Scarlett Johansson. That they was writing that movie about me. They
I
just
know
don't
they
know
were,
it.
but you should have got cut a check. I swear that you should have got cut a check, because I was like, this woman's a full savage. And like I said, we're definitely going to need to have you back, because you just have too much to talk about to fit into one podcast. Yeah, and which is a good thing. I mean, can you think of anything better? Like, you're too cool to just have on one. I think it would be interesting for you to talk about coercion, why you stayed with your abuser. You're a mother of 7.
One for right now, until the sex trafficking started.
Right.
So like I was saying, that coercion in that particular place looked like, because remember, we're in a relationship with each other. You guys go back to the story. Baby, I can't pay the light bill. Okay, a reaction to that, because this my boyfriend, is, let me negotiate with you. Can you go find work somewhere else? Is there somebody that will hire you? I'm looking to encourage you to do something about this. I'm not looking for you to encourage me to do anything about this, because my idea of a man is, you stick your neck out there on the line for me, not me stick my neck out on the line for you. And so it went from the light bill to the rent can't get paid to this about to get cut off. And I'm like, well, you ain't found no job, you ain't done this. Well, baby, can you go back to work just for a little bit? Just for a little bit till we get on our feet. And because I think I'm in a relationship, I try to negotiate out of that. Now I do this about 2 or 3 weeks. But after a while, his patience is worn thin, because in his mind, he done got rid of all these women for me. But now I won't go to work. So now I got to force you. Now I got to manhandle you, when I was just trying to keep you as a prize or keep you as a trophy. You know what I
You were the
mean?
main one. You
And
weren't
so
expected to work. He dropped off everybody else that was making him money. Then all of a sudden he needs money, and he knows he's going to have to use force for you to go.
exactly. So the relationship was fraudulent. I didn't know it. He knew I was a prize.
I think you need to tap into that just a little, Nissi, because I don't think folks fully understand what it's like to be in a fully fraudulent relationship. Were you in love, or did you have feelings with your trafficker, this specific one? Or were you simply on some survival sex hustle mode? Like, because survival sex to me, or doing what you need to do to get by, is different than trafficking, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, survival sex is what I was doing when I was being trafficked. It's like,
Right.
I gotta do this, so I ain't gonna live, kind of thing. There was instances of survival sex in the beginning.
Okay.
But I mean, after you live with somebody 2 months and you think you know their character because you ain't known this person long enough, it go from survival sex to, well, maybe I can give this a chance.
Yeah, you kind of start
You
to
know what
catch feelings for them, especially if you're having a romantic or seemingly romantic between the sheets relationship. And
Absolutely.
and I'm not diminishing, I might get slaughtered for saying this, but there is, as a woman, I'll speak from my experience. For myself as a woman, there is something really reassuring about having someone take care of you. It makes it
Yes.
feels a void of, it makes me feel I am taken care of. That's just, I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for Nissi. I'm not speaking for any other woman. I'm speaking for myself, that there is something instinctual that if I have a roof over my head, food in my belly, and especially if you have children, that makes you feel like you're in a relationship.
Right.
Even
And I want you guys to understand, because I got this one kid, don't forget, I got a court case going on. So who's taking me to court? He is. Who's sitting in listening to the court case? He is. Who's giving me ideas on what to say next? He is. And so the bond, where was me bonding through my trauma with him, which was how to navigate through a legal system that is, a determining factor for the rest of my life, of what's going to happen to me and my kid. And so that's where my advice was coming from. He had my ear. And whatever he said was golden. Whatever he said do, I said it. So I remember one time the judge was asking me, you know, when they did a check, they do the little check and stuff. And he wanted me to send him my bank account statements, and I did. And he was like, oh, wow, this is a, you know, a different transition, you know, what happened and stuff. I said, well, my trafficker had already, you know, gotten me ready for what to say. He said, when he asks you what you do for a living, you tell him that you an independent contractor.
Mm.
That was my first time hearing this word. And I remember going before this man and saying, oh, I'm an independent contractor with so much confidence, because I knew I had the right answers, and I knew I had the power to fight this man to keep my baby. And because I had the right answers, and because I knew the right things to say, and because my confidence in court had changed, and I looked like I didn't need the court, I looked like I could fight this case off, the judge just made it harder for me. So right after me saying, okay, I'm an independent contractor, and I showed self-sufficiency, he said, okay, well then who's keeping your baby? I said, well, my aunt's keeping my baby. He said, well, you know what? Look like you make enough to pay child support, so I'm gonna put you on child support. Boom. The game got changed. I'm 16 years old paying child support.
Oh.
Just like that. Not to my trafficker yet.
And you couldn't at any point, I just want to remind people that are listening, it's not like you could go to law enforcement. There's too much extra things going on. You couldn't go to law enforcement. About the only thing you could have done was left and gone to a shelter, maybe, if that, because you're also still a minor. These are not ideas that come to you naturally, especially not when you're in a pattern of abuse. So you couldn't leave and go anywhere besides maybe a shelter, and then you still would have lost your child, which I don't think folks fully understand. That bond between mother and child is, a woman will do a lot. A parent will do a lot to save their child or to keep their child with them. One thing I did have a question about throughout your experience, were you ever arrested? I didn't know if that was ever a part that was a part of your story. I wasn't able to see.
Yes, I wasn't arrested then. I was supposed to have been arrested, and that's when I came out with my story with HPD. And it was so funny because, you know, you got to get permission to talk about those sides of the story, because you know, the police. Here's the police thing: the police is for intervention, not for prevention. Okay. So this is me talking about a moment in time where the police intervene in a human trafficking scenario without any human trafficking training. So because human trafficking wasn't a conversation in 2006, then let's talk about this now, because this is what we could have worked on, but this is what we did, even though we didn't have,
just to give folks a reference. The first law was written into effect about human trafficking in the United States just a little over 20 years ago. So Nissi's talking about 6 years after no one was talking about human trafficking. No one. We were talking about domestic violence. We were talking about sexual assault, barely. We were about 20 years into the domestic violence movement. So we were just getting our feet wet from within the domestic violence movement, just starting to get our feet wet from within the sexual assault movement. As far as the world was concerned, when you were a human trafficking victim in 2006, like Nissi's talking about, you were considered a prostitute, period, at any age.
Yes,
absolutely. You were considered a willing adult sex worker. So for anyone to even hear Nissi out, this was not available.
Not at all.
I just want to clarify for that, Nissi, because when I hear your story, I fully understand. I want to make sure people understand your story. You know what I'm saying? Like, dang, I want them to understand, like, dang, this is not an easy time frame.
Not at all. My trafficking started in 2003 with CPS or DFPS, the Department of Family and Protective Services, did not make provision for dealing with human trafficking for kids in conservatorship, for kids missing while in conservatorship, or for kids who had became adults and aging out such as myself through conservatorship until 2016. So 13 years later, my kid was 13. So that means that DFPS didn't deal with human trafficking until I was 27, 28.
Which is wild to think about. That's why I'm like, we're just beginning. We got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
We're just beginning because it's a lot. Your story is at the forefront, definitely, because you had some legal issues there where you were the first human trafficking victim in some cases, to try to get your own children back. So you have 7 children?
I have 7 children.
So you have 7 children. How many of those children were as a result of your experience as a survivor?
2.
2. And when you
2.
became pregnant with those 2, what was the decision there to keep those 2 children? What was that like for you? So you were your first 2 children that were as a result of your trafficking experience.
No, the second 2. The first one is the one I had at 15, and then I got sued, and then the state participated in that vulnerability, that exploiting the vulnerability so that I could be trafficked.
Right.
And then at 16, as I'm being trafficked by the second pimp, because that, so like I said, we left off on fraud and just being in that place, you know, where I was trying to negotiate with him on some things that he could do, and he made me negotiate on what I could do to make it, you know, life better for the both of us and things like that. And when he got tired of negotiating and being patient about it, it was come get in the car with me. No, get dressed. Come get in the car with me. I'm thinking we're going out on a date somewhere. We pull up to a hotel that's no longer there on the north side of Houston. He gives me a key card to the room, and he has a gun, and he tells me, "Don't come out of that unless you have my money."
And you knew what that meant. You knew what that meant.
Yeah.
So you pull up, gun on the lap. You see the gun, you know this is life or death. It's also your child's life or death. Let's also speak about that aspect, Nissi, because what folks don't understand is every step along the way, these traffickers held your child's life in the balance as well.
Absolutely. So but not only his life,
about you.
Right. And not only my kid's life, but now my life, because I don't think people are really thinking about this man has already rehearsed life with me and future life with me, because he's been going to court with me. So he knows everything that is distasteful to the judge and that I'm trying to hide and keep a secret. And so that was more or less, you know, it's like my kid, and then that was left in the balance, knowing that he had that much information on me and could potentially ruin my chances of me getting, you know, my children back and things like that. And there'd be nothing I could do about it. It wasn't just that life. It was taking my life from me to be able to start over. You know, having that on my life, that I'm an unfit mother and that I can't take care of my children, or that I'm a child abuser, or I'm neglectful and things like that. And really, I'm sitting up here like, no, you neglectful. I wouldn't have been here had you put me in a shelter where I could be a mother to my kid, because I am a kid. You told me to come out here and be an adult. You did. You should have taken me back in, but you didn't. You forced me to be an adult when I could not manage being an adult. That's not what I wanted.
So you did what you had to do. Had he already arranged dates for you, Johns, for you in the room, or was that something you?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And back then, being trafficked was different. And I'm trying to, you know, break it down and tell people, if you were using a condom, that's less money you had to pay. So that's less money you made. If you did it without a condom, you made more money. And so 16 years old, you know, some of my Johns were without condoms. I end up pregnant while the court case is still ongoing.
So the second father, or the third father, Was that a John or your trafficker, or you don't know?
John. Definitely a John. I have to say in between both, because in between him purchasing and negotiating is, some Johns can play dual roles.
Yeah.
I don't want to take away you get what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to take away from him just being a purchaser, because he was negotiating set times date. There was, a recruitment of not just me, but with other girls too. You know what I'm saying? There were threesomes facilitated, things like that and stuff. And that was his experience for wanting to purchase me.
So he was
Etsy.
maybe a reoccurring John that was a little bit more, some Johns end up being a little more a part of your life. It's always about the money for this on the behalf of the trafficking victim, because we have usually a quota or other situations to make. But there are some Johns that stand out because they'll do more. It's hard to explain, but they want more, or to be around more. Is that he was more a part of your life, but he probably paid the price. So he was,
Yes.
yeah, so he probably paid more, but he was also around more and more frequent. And also too, as a survivor, in order to survive, you're looking for the least potential. When you go into a situation where you're selling sex, you're looking for the least potential chance of dying. And if you get comfortable with a
Right.
purchaser, you're willing to do a little bit more, be a little bit more extra, just to keep that individual around. So, you don't have to fill that time slot with somebody that's going to kill you.
Exactly. And that was a perfect explanation. And I remember watching the R. Kelly case and listening to the one young lady that people were outraged with because she didn't get jail time for recruiting a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old. And I remember thinking to myself, that could have been me.
100%.
You know what I'm saying? I didn't recruit anybody. I was the one recruited. But, I was forced to have threesomes with people
Nissi,
that I did not want to have sex with, because that person was a reoccurring John, and you do get comfortable with them.
So, sorry, we're having a little internet breakup. Let's just give it a second real quick. Sorry.
Okay.
Right back to, no. She yelling at her kids again. Look at him. Okay, I think we're back, Nissi. Because she's on mute. She's telling her kids. You back, Nissi?
You keep all of that in there in the podcast. I love it.
Me too.
Because I'm a real mama.
That's good. I think that's good. I think that, so you got maybe a little bit of a closer relationship. And by the way, I do understand what you're saying. I just revisited the R. Kelly case the day before, or R. Kelly cases the day before yesterday. I like to revisit those big cases to look back. It's a complex reason why I do, but specifically those survivors, hopefully I'd like to have some on my podcast. I have important stories to tell. I do think that, especially as a minor, you can be coerced into being an abuser, and that there is a fine line between being an abuser, knowing the difference between right and wrong. And there is a fine line between life and death. If you think that your life is in danger, you will do whatever you need to do to get out. Now, in your particular case, you were also surviving for you and your child. So you got pregnant by a John, by a buyer. What was that decision like to decide to keep that child? I think that I don't know what that's like. I can't imagine what that's like.
Baby, let me tell you something. It's a total different environment to see today women preferring to kill the babies versus wanting to keep the babies. And, you know, I look at my baby and he is, you know, 16, he about to be 17 years old. And I always think, wow, what if I, you know, made a decision to just give up on you? But for me, it was another test, because in my life, people had given up on me and I felt like I should have been given a chance. And I kept thinking, I'm gonna give this kid the chance that I didn't have. And that's what real mamas do. I knew then I was a mother. The way I thought, I knew I was a mother. The way I talked, I knew I was a mother. Because when you're a real mother, ain't nobody coming in between you and your children. Baby, you will go to hell and back for your children because you love them that much. You want to protect any strong possibility of any future that they could have. And it's not about the control, it's just about the protection. Real mothers protect. You don't just let your kids out there all willy-nilly and stuff like that. I couldn't do it. But for the mothers who do decide to abort, I cannot speak to that because I've never aborted. That's the reason why I have 7 going on 8 right now. I've never aborted. But if given the opportunity again, knowing what I know now and being 16 and I got pregnant with Chris, I would still keep my baby because it's not their fault. And I don't want to kill anybody because my mama could have killed me too. And the stuff I went through, it was supposed to kill me, but it didn't. And my kids needed to see what that felt like and see what that looked like from another human being.
That's intense. That's intense.
Yeah, it is.
It's intense, Nissi. It really is. You know, I think that every survivor has their own path and every survivor has their own story.
Right.
And I'm grateful that you're out here sharing your own story. Like I said, I have to have you back. There's too much to unpack. Because you went into the Navy. You left your abuser once and for all, but you were plotting and scheming, girl. And I got to get that as sometime on a different podcast. I need to get how you was plotting and scheming to leave your abuser and how hard that was, how hard it was to get your kids back. I have to have you back. This is not a question. But I want you to spend a chunk of time because this is heavy. You're obviously a woman of deep principles. Core principles. You obviously have deep core principles and you have done so freaking much since then. For the last 10, 15 minutes, I want you to just tell people if they're in that space, what to do. And, or what, that's such a horrible way of framing it. Not if they're in that space, what to do, but what you would suggest folks do who are in an abusive, coercive relationship that are getting ready to leave. How hard that was for you, and then what you're doing now, because that's the most impressive part of everything.
I will say this. When you being trafficked, you do what I call it. You pull a tab. A tab is a trick a bitch.
Girl, I'm done with you.
And sometimes you just got to trick a bitch.
Can you unpack exactly what trick a bitch means? For
your audience.
Yeah.
That tab, baby. That tab is something else, child. Woo, the tab. So I came up with the tab because a lot of my plotting, you know, in scheming, really, it wasn't deceptive and it wasn't survival. It was necessary. And when it's necessary, it leaves the deception it comes into what we call espionage.
Just to unpack, sorry, I just want to like decode for me here. What she's talking about is getting ready to leave her abuser. And she had to do the uttermost to get prepared so that she did not die in that process. So when she says trick a bitch, she had to trick her, she had to trick her John, she had to trick her abuser, and she had to get ready to leave. And that's called a safety plan, just by standards. Yes. But Nissi has a much funner way of putting it. So you were on the process of full-blown espionage. Okay, now, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just had to.
No, you good. Because there's street terminology. There's girls that was on the street, and there was girls that have these romantic stories about human trafficking. My story ain't romantic.
Neither is mine. Because I'm not even going to sit here and lie to you. That's why I can decode both.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? That's why we sisters.
I know it. I know it.
Okay, and girl, all your listeners gonna be talking about some girl. I'm about to pull a tab, girl. Y'all just put hashtag tab. And Nissi told you, just give me my street cred. That's all I want is my street credit. That's all.
You verified in these streets. You verified in these.
Yes.
Okay.
And so basically, espionage, when you are trying to leave, looks submissive. Mm. It is when you come into agreement with the demonic pressure of what's happening. And you say to yourself, I'm coming into this agreement for this specific time, because after this specific time, this is how I'm going to make my exit. Mm. Other than that, once I'm done, there's no longer a contract. You release yourself and you release everything that's attached to you. And let me help you understand something about agreement. The power of agreement is so powerful that the Bible says whenever there's two or more in agreement, there Jesus is in the midst. So you need agreement so that the Father can show up and defend you, baby. And when I came into agreement with the enemy, that also meant that I respected the process of the enemy, because it's a demonic occult. Human trafficking is a colonial atrocity. It should have never happened. But it's also the second slavery that's attached to a demonic occult. It's a part of the Leviathan spiritual world. And that's for my people that read the Bible, because they're like, where did this stuff come from? Human trafficking is in the Bible, is there, and God gives us provision on how to deal with it. So I came into agreement with the enemy out of espionage, right? I picked up my staff like Moses. I went through my training, and then I went to Pharaoh and said, okay, now you got to let my people go, which meant me and my children. What happened was the enemy came into agreement with me. In the state of Texas, if you do not want to go to jail for anything you've done to anybody, you simply marry them, because it is against the law for a married woman or a husband to basically, try to incarcerate your husband. You can't tell on your husband. You can't tell on your wife. You can't do that. It's against the law. So everything that my trafficker had done to me from 15 on up was basically wiped away like it never happened because of marriage. And I said, okay.
Your trafficker basically coerced you into marrying him.
Absolutely.
Because you were getting a check. That's a whole other conversation. And I definitely want to touch on it because it's really, really important. I'm not trying to bring it up.
Oh, yeah.
Just, your story's so dense, it's impossible to pack it all in. Nissi, what was the moment that you realized you needed to leave? What was that like for you? Because for every survivor, it's different. And I guess for me specifically, it was little things. It was like seeds planted, it was like little tiny seeds planted along the way. And then eventually I was like, oh no, this is life or death.
When I would go to work in the morning, because I went to Franklin Beauty School in the daytime, and then I was stripping at nighttime. Everybody knew it. Everybody knew it. This was no secret. And but I also worked in the mall at the sex store. So all the girls' clothes and stuff, I provided for them. So they stripper wear, they shoes. I was the go-to girl for everything that people needed. And I would always show up to work at the mall extra early, because I would just be getting off from work from the strip club, and there was no need for me to go to bed because I was gonna miss the shift if I went to bed. But because I went so early, the only entrance into the mall was through the military side. So every morning I see the Air Force, the Marines, the Army, and the Navy. I'm seeing it every morning. And of course the men see me, and so they talking, he, ha, ha, and everything. But there was one recruiter, and he told me I could get into the Navy. He told me I was ready and I could do it. And I kept saying, the Navy don't want me. I'm a hoe. No, the Navy don't want me. I go up and down poles for a living, baby. Shoot. Because that was my language. I didn't have another vernacular. I would still be saying sex work. I would be saying sex work if the word debauchery didn't exist. You understand what I'm saying? Like I would be saying a whole bunch of things, but this is me today. And I kept telling him no. I denied him every opportunity. I mean, he was a cutie pie too. He got them green eyes. He was light skinned, and I was like, boy, I take all your money, child, please.
You probably would have. He's probably hoping you would.
Right. He was telling me when they got paid, he told me some guaranteed check on the 1st and the 15th. So I would be like, okay, well, I'm coming back on the 15th then. So I'm going to join on the 15th. That way I know you serious.
But you are trained. But the truth is, Nissi, that we joke about it, but you were a trained hustler. You were trained.
I was a trained hustler.
You were a trained hustler.
Yeah, I was.
For years and years and years of experience, you were a trained hustler, and you were literally out for, number one, trying to get the money, because you always had a pimp to feed. So once you get trained that way, you get trained. There's no breaking it, which actually does. No. By the way, Nissi, I think we would be remiss to end this conversation without recognizing the amount of female survivors that enter the military to leave their abuser.
I don't know, because the Navy had a hard time recognizing me. I'm one of the first and only, as far as I know, that have been recognized publicly as surviving human trafficking and accepted in the military as a prostitute. I had to get 8 waivers to get into the military because I was a victim of sex trafficking. I did not have a permanent address because they didn't want to use my pimp's address. But we ended up having to use it anyways, just for a political form. I had to get a waiver for my tattoos. I had too many dependents to be eligible for active duty, so I had to go in as a reserve. I didn't have parents, so I didn't have legal guardians to write down. And I did not put my mother on my application because they were trying to manage the risk of me being accepted at that particular time. So it wasn't until I actually got in where I could acknowledge her as my mother, but just, the application process of it, no. I had a GED. Right. You can't get in the military with a GED. You have to have a high school diploma. And I had to get a couple more waivers because I went in as a military cop. And you can't become a military police officer until you're an E5 in the military. You don't come in as an E1. And I went in during the time of war. So there was a high risk that if I went in and I got deployed, I died, then that was it. And so I was willing to take the chance on me dying.
I don't think, so a lot of survivors do enter the military in a similar, of course, everybody's circumstance is different, but when you're a survivor of domestic violence, human trafficking, or the lifestyle as a whole, you're going to die either way. There was a moment in Nissi where I looked at my life and I was like, okay, I'm about to die. Like it's a matter of days, moments, hours. I don't know when it's coming, but it's coming. I feel the death I could feel the breath of death behind me. I could feel it. It was like chasing me. So I knew I was going to die in that lifestyle. No questions about it. It was a matter of time. I've been beaten up so much, left for dead so much. You know what I mean? I've been beaten up so much. It was a matter of time. I think for survivors that enter the military, it is paid. Your abuser can't come find you because you're in basic. You know, you have some money coming in, you have clothes on your back, you have a roof over your head, you have some other things. I do know one other survivor, by the way. I think you two would actually get along great. She's awesome. That left human trafficking to enter the military, and that was a big deal. She had a record and stuff like that. But
I can't wait to meet her.
Oh, you would love her. I'll send you her story after we're done. Long story short, you clawed, scratched, got your way. For anyone who's down, for anyone who's in an abusive relationship, who feels like they even just can't live another day, what advice would you give to them to get back up?
I will say this. I'm 34. And I knew, first of all, I ended up being sued again at 25 by the trafficker from when I was 16. And I became the first case in the state of Texas where I was sued for child support because he ended up taking my kids just because of what he knew about me. So that fear of that happening actually did happen. And he used terminology. He said things like, oh, I burnt my kid's feet, I break my kid's arm. And another allegation was sexual abuse, that my oldest son was sleeping with his daughter, which my son at that time was 9 and my daughter was 4, that I had with him. And so all of these allegations, and what happened was, as a result of what happened to me from when I was a kid, all of that stuff got pulled forward to the forefront while I'm trying to live my best life. And it was, oh, you doing it. You sleeping with men. I always say, I was sleeping with men in front of my children. And I said, how can I work 90 hours a week? When would I have time? I don't have time to sleep with myself. Like, I'm like, you know what I'm saying? Yes. If there are 40 hours in the work week and you're doing double that work week time plus 10 hours, when do you have time? I was a full-time college student. My kids went to private school. I was a homeowner. I had purchased 2 vehicles. I was making over $100,000 a year because I worked in law enforcement. When I got back home, I went through 2 police academies. I got trained by Blackwater. I had several guns. I was, what you saw in Black Widow, like that was me. I would whoop your ass. I was kicking ass.
With my ass, Nissi. And I'm going with it.
I'm trying to tell you, when I saw Black Widow, I was like, oh, they made this movie about me. They don't even know it. I need to call a producer.
Right. They need to cut you a check. Maybe they should. Honestly, Nissi, I think it would be good to have a little Netflix series about your story.
Oh, no, seriously. No, I had a top secret security clearance. And, I didn't come home to be trained in San Antonio and Lackland like most people do. Right. I was trained in Dam Neck, Virginia. So I was on the beach. I was in the gutter. I was in the water. I was out there where you go to be deployed. It was that tough. I actually got trained by mercenaries, people that wake up ready to kill on contract. So,
but don't you feel? I'm just throwing this out there, and then I'm so sorry, Nissi. I have plans with my grandma later, so I'm like on a heavy time frame. But and you need to shout out again everything that you're doing now. So I'm trying to get us to that point. But don't you feel that human trafficking, surviving those intense, desperate, raw, real experiences provided you the groundwork? You built your house on rock. not on sand, not based off of anything necessarily you chose, but what was given to you. You played the hand you were dealt, and it set you up for success later on down the road because you learned how to walk through the fire and to keep walking. I don't know if that's how you feel, but I mean, I'm just like listening to your story. I'm like, how could she make it through this? How could she make it through this? Okay. She kept walking. You kept walking
I
forward.
kept going.
You kept walking forward.
Yeah, I will say this to survivors, because I know that's where you was trying to get me to end, and I can talk.
Me too.
I'm gonna say this to you ladies. Time is currency. So whatever you spend your time doing the most, that's what you just bought. You just bought that for your life. And when I think about where I'm at today, I think about what I put my time in, and then I think about what I just purchased myself. You get what I'm saying? And you are not for sale. You are not a commodity to be traded on any public or private market for anybody. Because God loved you so much that he took out the time to hide his greatest reward, and he hid it in you, and it was his inheritance. And so you got to protect that with your life. Revelations 12:11 says we overcome the enemy. How? Number one, the power of your testimony. Girls, you have to tell your testimony. You're not telling your testimony for you. You're telling your testimony so that you'll let the enemy know that what you did to me is not my standard of living. Get out of that cycle of abuse. You can't afford to be a victim all your life, because I've never seen a rich victim. I ain't a rich victim. I'm rich, but I ain't a rich victim. You understand? That's the difference. Because you got to learn how to manage wealth, because the enemy knew you were profitable. That's why you were even trafficked to begin with. He wanted to snatch your wealth from you. He wanted to take it out of you before you figured it out. So the fact that somebody was able to profiteer off of you, what you need is already in you. Then we overcome by the blood of the Lamb. You got to have a leader. You got to have a leader, whether your leader is Jesus or whoever it is that you choose. I'm saying Jesus because that's who my leader is. That's who my advocate is. That's who stood in the trial. That's who went through the gutter. That's who came and got me out. Jesus. You got to have somebody that's greater than you. So as you're growing and it's time to be lifted up, you need somebody stronger than you to put you in position. Because you're going to have to learn how to lead with your life and not with your position. And my position was a bottom bitch. And you can't leave from that position, because you can't, if you're going to leave from the position of a bottom bitch, all you can do is teach somebody how to be another bottom. And that's not what you're here for.
Nissi.
And then,
sorry, go ahead. I don't want to mess up your whole flow.
Girl, and then not loving your life to death. I don't talk about human trafficking because it makes me feel good. I talk about it with my life to death. I will die with this truth. I'm willing to die for these beliefs. I'm willing to die to make sure somebody else's kid don't walk up out of conservatorship, don't come through conservatorship missing, don't go through a shelter, through a residential treatment program, and then get sued by the same state that sued me, and then be punished and penalized and perjured from your true self, your true self-worth, because you couldn't live up to their values, their way of life. Do it with death. Don't do it with life. That's my best advice. And I promise you, you will be so happy, because the hardest person to defeat is somebody who ain't scared to die. That's the hardest person to fight. When you ain't scared to die, that's the hardest person to fight. And listen, I'm gonna end with this, I promise. Every time you overcome something, the devil gets mad because he has to rehearse what Jesus did for you on the cross. That's what overcome means. It means pissing Satan off just that much that you gonna get your ass up and make him remember what God already sacrificed for you. You've been redeemed. Redemption means to buy back. You've already been bought by the blood. You're not a slave. And if you ever feel like Jesus ain't the way, the truth, and the life, always remember this. Judas purchased Jesus with 30 pieces of silver. 30 pieces of silver was the equivalent of what you purchased a slave for. So in essence, Jesus was labor trafficked too. And he loved you enough to sacrifice himself so you could tell your truth.
Powerful words, Nissi. You know, you are a mother of 7, and I think ultimately you could be the mother of the entire United States. We all need Nissi. Nissi is the entire United States mother.
I receive it. Queen mother.
Right, exactly. Like you are the mom, the United States whole mom, in a good way. In a good way.
Mm-hmm.
Nissi, I'm so grateful that you took the time out to just join me today, to laugh with me today, to cry with me today. You are an inspiration. It's inspiring for me to see how many hurdles you jumped over and how many times you kept getting back up. I just can't believe it. And to just sit here and to just be so exposed and so raw, but to move humanity forward, especially for Black women, let's not miss that.
Yes.
Black women and girls. That is excruciatingly important. Please never stop speaking. Please keep going. Please remember what happened, what it was like, and what it's like now, because we need you out here. For anyone that's interested in following you, supporting your work, or finding it, why don't you have your own podcast though? Like, let's call it a spade.
Because I'm too busy.
Exactly.
Because when I get up from here, I got to go do a fashion show.
Exactly.
That's why I was trying to hurry up.
Exactly. Okay, so make sure your lashes are good. Okay, so where can people find you now? And how can they support you?
Absolutely. Please email me with comments, questions, and concerns at Nissi, Nissi .Hamilton@yahoo.com. You can find me on Facebook, Nissi Hamilton, my name, hashtag I survived human trafficking, or you could just send me a friend request. If you can't reach me on Facebook, go to Twitter at Hamilton Nissi, Hamilton Nissi, and reach me there as well, because Eliza sure can reach me there. So that's how we hooked up with each other. I absolutely love her. And then if you want to donate and keep the pressure that I'm putting in the atmosphere, in the political realms, in disturbing and disrupting social normalcy, as people have received trafficking through the pimp terminology, pimping their knees in what they thought it was back then. That was the culture. Because we have written laws to be a deterrent to these ideas and these culturalistic ideas that are shaping the future of our children. Please follow me on my website, www.nissihamilton.com, and you can donate and keep me in the Capitol. Keep me writing city ordinances. I just passed my first city ordinance in the city of Dallas. I pissed a lot of people off. I'm pretty happy about that. And I closed the strip clubs down from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. So they have to close at 2 a.m. from now on. They cannot stay open past 2. And TABC can regulate the alcohol and everything else, the debauchery that goes on in those places. I'm super excited about it.
When people hear that, it's not an anti-sex work type of thing. It's more of an anti-violence type of thing. I mean, the shootings,
absolutely,
the beatings, it's not an anti-sex work thing. It's just the strip clubs and the law enforcement cannot possibly control when that many establishments are kept open. And I was trafficked for a short period of time in that area, so I'm not, I'm never sad to take those people to take a hit, you know what I'm saying? But
right.
But please support Nissi. If you find it in your heart, please, even if you have a couple bucks, just throw some money her way, because she has a voice that deserves to be heard, and we need to kind of keep these voices in the forefront. If you want to support me, if you're not already following me on Twitter, I'm at Eliza Bleu, ElizaBleu. I am on Locals, eliza.locals.com, Eliza, ELIZA.locals, how do I spell locals? Locals.com. That's predominantly where I take my donations, my Bitcoin. I also have my Twitter tip jar open if you want to toss me a couple bucks. My podcast is not sponsored right now. I have no money coming in from this. I am trying to get these amazing guests on. If you have it in your heart to keep this operation going, please throw me a couple bones. I would love it, because I want to build this platform up so that I can interview amazing individuals and build this platform up so that I can have survivors like Nissi on and other survivors of human trafficking, so that they have an option to go to the corporate press or not to go to the corporate press, so that they can go with a trauma-informed interview, so that it's not that same run-of-the-mill interview. And in order to do that, I need support as well. So thank you so much, Nissi. I love you from the bottom of my heart. I've never cried so much during a podcast. I've recorded a few now. You're my first survivor of human trafficking. I knew it was going to be intense, but I absolutely love you. And thank you for everything that you shared today. I know someone's going to hear this and feel a pull in their heart to step forward. I can just feel it. I can feel it.
I love it. I love you. And I can't wait to come back for part 2.
We're going to get part 2 on the books. All right, Nissi, have a great day. And everyone, thank you so much for listening. And we will see you back here next time.